Well, summer is here finally in New Zealand, and I wanted to invite you into my house. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a little bit of design work and let you share the time with me and see what goes on behind the scenes. So let's go inside. Hi, so welcome to my little house. This is obviously my home, the caravan, so I'll let you have a wee spin around, back area, and this is my work studio. So let's have a wee chat about what this video is all about. So thanks for joining me. This is the behind the scenes of, so I had an idea. Now let's see whether or not the design process goes to plan. So you're going to be able to be a fly on the wall as I go through the process of my thinking over the concept of this beautiful little dress, possible skirt. Let's see how it goes. It turns into some other ideas as well, and the process that I go through as I'm thinking about a pattern and beginning the early stages of trialing it, testing it, and then eventually, hopefully, if it's worked, it gets to be put pen on paper or keyboard strokes on keyboard to have the computer write up and that PDF developed and eventually out to market. But in the process, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and I think often we forget what the designer process is all about. There's photos, there's video, etc. that I like to add with my patterns. So I'm Paula Hope, the Caravan Hooker. Thank you for joining me here, and I hope you really enjoy this raw behind the scenes. So I had an idea. Let's create. So one of the things I've started with is the concept of the bodice for a child's dress, more probably for an infant, maybe 18 months through to a 4-year-old maximum. So one of the things that I tend to do is I'll have a concept in my mind, and I've started just doing some drawings of the bodice, particularly that's just your front profile. The type of stitching that I would want to use, because I'm using more of a block Lydia type pattern, and then the ways that I could potentially ruche it down at the front in order to give it a bit more appeal and shape. Thinking about the concept of doing the crochet of the bodice in a fairly simple manner so that it's not a complicated pattern for somebody to make. So I've also got either just doing it completely plain with straps, or the ruched in idea, or even what I would call a pleat, which would create then this sort of look where you would get 2 lines going off and stretched out. So I've done a couple of sketches just working out some ideas, and my next step is obviously to be looking at the concept that an infant who is say 18 months old has a chest measurement of around 19 inches, which in centimeters is, let's have a look, around the 48 to 49 centimeters. Now, in the process of beginning at this point in the lower size, the actual stitch that I'm doing, which is a little bit like a moss stitch but is a concept of a slightly different way of making that, because you're doing 2 single crochets into the gaps. Now if the bodice is running this way for stretch, there's not a lot of stretch, but if you run it this way, there is a lot of stretch. And obviously I'm thinking now about the fit and the wearing ease of a garment for a child. So that was my first piece that I crocheted. I've now started crocheting it beginning, rather than doing a chain this way and working lines that way. I've actually started it with the width, all right, being here, and doing my lines across and growing my bodice. Now the reason I've done that is because you get the stretch this way and not so much this way. Then it occurred to me that if I made the bodice in this manner, growing it around the chest, that the ability to change the pattern, to customize it, to take it up to the next sizes would be relatively easy, because you'd be crocheting this until you got to the measurement, which was close to this chest measurement, probably a little bit less because you'll have some wearing ease, some design ease, depending on how fitted you wanted the bodice to be. So this is just the first part of me thinking about the bodice, the top band of this particular dress, and I'm doing this in a cotton, and it's a 10 ply, and I plan on going onto the skirt and making the skirt part of it in a 8 ply or light worsted weight, and adding that to the end to create the dress, the flow on part of it. However, I'm not sure at this point whether or not maybe I've gone a little bit too heavy. So these are just some of the early stage things that I process when I'm beginning a pattern, and obviously as I make this up and add this to it, I may well discover that actually this is far too thick and won't work. However, it does feel nice and soft, and I think against the skin of a child could be really lovely. So that is one of the first stages of beginning with the bodice. So if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. I'd really appreciate it. Hit the notifications button so that as I put out new material, you'll be first to know. And I do thank you for any likes or comments. It's always great to hear from you as to how you found the content or what you'd like to contribute as well to the community that are watching the material that I produce. As you can see, there's not as much stretch across it as there is this way, and I really love that look. I'm not a big lacy girl. I think I like slightly more linear structured looks, and you'll probably see that from some of my other patterns. So initially started the pattern working it this way, but of course there's not a lot of stretch that would go around the bodice. The stretch is this way, and I'm concerned that once I pop the lower dress part on, the weight of it will then stretch that bodice out and it will look quite ugly. In order to customize the pattern, being able to grow it whatever size chest you need, this is a fantastic option, running it this way. So let's have a look at what we're referring to when we talk about design ease and wear ease. Unlike when you're making a blanket, an item that's just sitting completely flat, design ease or wear ease doesn't become a factor at all. But when you're doing wearables, you're having to think about the crocheted piece actually fitting around the body, the 3D form. And keeping in mind that your crochet work, depending on your stitch, will have stretch, either a 4-way stretch going in all directions or a 2-way stretch. Now this particular stitch stretches not so much up and down along the rows. We're working the rows this way, but it definitely has incredible stretch this way. So if I lay that piece down and I measure it, it's measuring 8 inches or around 20 centimeters. Now let's have a look at what happens if we lay it alongside the tape measure alongside. We hold one end. We'll just bring the work up a bit higher so you can see this. Okay, now how much stretch at the moment can I get in that piece? There's at least comfortably another good inch, so 2.5 centimeters of stretch. Now depending on the yarn that you use, the bounce back, particularly with certain non-natural fibres, so acrylic, polyester, nylon, the stretch back can be very little, whereas with natural fibres, wool, mohair, alpaca, some cottons, then you can have a little bit more stretch back. Now the type of stitch that you do, so there's several things you've got to think about. The yarn that you're using, the natural bounce back that it has, the memory that's in the fibres, and then the stitch that you've created and how much stretch that has and how much bounce back. Now there's one little technique that you can do with wearables is in an area that's going to require stretching around a body and over time you don't want it becoming loose and baggy, we can put in a fine elastic thread which is used often for shirring when you do sewing, and we can actually work it into the back in several rows in order to give this further elastication, and we'll look at that later. So this is the ease that can be created. Now there are situations where you'll do negative ease, so you will maybe have a measurement you need to finish to of being 9 inches, but you'll actually finish your piece at 8 because it's going to naturally stretch to the 9, and we don't want it to be baggy. So like on a hat or a glove, you may want to make it what we call a negative ease, so you would make it smaller than the finished required measurement. And in this case I'm working on a bodice for an infant, for a child, and I want it to be not too fitted, so I've got to think very carefully about how much give this will have over time, and do I need to put elastication in the back of it? Is that an option? This is all part of the process, the thinking that needs to happen in the process of designing a pattern. So after making what is nearly 11 inches of the bodice, working it in the different direction, I think I'm settled on the concept that this is definitely the better way to construct it in order to have the give, the stretch, the ease. And so this one that I originally started with and sampled, which has all the stretch running down the bodice but not across it, I think isn't going to work for me. So yep, it's the good old frog and start over. But this is the process that we go through as I design. There's a lot of testing, sampling, working out what does and doesn't work, and sometimes an idea that you have doesn't fly, just doesn't work, and a lot of patience is required, and also there is obviously costs involved in being able to find the right fibres and yarns that you want to work with, testing them in order to get the finish that is ready for a pattern that can go to market, that can have the best possible result for you. So that's just a little bit of insight on the first stage of getting this wee dress underway. So I bet you had no idea that's how much time goes into designing just the bodice for a basic dress on a child. Did I actually get the top right? And in advance I apologise for the very raw audio. It was a very hot day and you can hear the fans in the background. So my background has been in sewing and fashion, and so I have a good understanding of garment construction and fit, design ease, all those things, and the importance of a product being able to have the longevity of wear. So you may not have seen this before, but this is a product called Elastic Shirring Elastic. It's a polyester elastic, and if you've ever seen dresses for yourself that may have had a bodice, a yoke, or possibly the end of a sleeve that is all gathered in, it's been done with this particular elastic in the bobbin of the sewing machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this as a stabilizer for my bodice here. Now it is fairly stretchy, so I've sort of worked out with the amount of stretch that I think I need to take it 1.5 times in order to give it the stretch that I'd want. So I'm going to actually place 4 of these, so let's just mark that out. So we're just going to go 1.5, and we do need a little bit of tie off, so I think I'll allow maybe around sort of 2 inches just to do a small amount of tie off. So we'll go to there, and I'm going to use the white. I think the white will look nicer than putting the black in, so I'm just going to cut 4 of those the same length. So I'm just going to use these little stitch markers. What I want to do is work on the bottom row first, so I'm just going to put a wee marker there. Oops. Now I'll do one up nearer the top end as well, probably about 2 stitches down. Actually, we'll want to run it sort of through that main stitch here. We don't want it running across these holes, so that does mean, actually the other option is to come up a little bit higher. Let's aim for that, and we'll see how that sits. So this next one I'd position through sort of this position, so we're doing just rough marker points, and this one I think we're doing there. So yeah, probably about here approximately we'd do our next one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is thread the elastic. I've got a needle that is fairly blunt. It's got a little bit of a point on it, but it's not a really sharp. I want to be able to just work in between these bits. So to start off, just get a starting position in here. So I think we'll just see if we can grab this here. Now you want to tie this off. Now remember, we have allowed ourselves a little bit of space on each end, so it's important that you secure it well at this point. So we'll just do several tie-offs here. Yeah, I think 3 would be good. I'm going to come back and actually weave that in later. I just want to make sure that I'm not cutting it really close to the knot. So then all we're going to do is we're going to find that lower point. I don't want to be coming across where these holes are. So obviously the way you position this will be determined a little bit by the pattern, the stitch that you've done. So we're just sort of going to go over and under, and in a couple of places, whoops, got it caught there on that. I'm just going to come back on itself to create a little bit of an anchor point. Actually no, we won't do that. Just thinking about how that will impact the design. If I do that, it may actually stop it from being able to naturally stretch. So let's just continue. I think we'll just weave it, just catching the back. We don't want any of this showing at the front, and we need to keep it a relatively straightish line. So I'll just continue along here and see you at the other end. So let's just have a little bit of a look there and make sure we're not seeing anything underneath. That looks good. Now I've pulled it up a little bit, so I do want to release that out, not have it too tight, and we want to be making it as even as possible. Okay, so I'm just going to secure it here. Take out my little marker for that wee spot. You want to do this several times. You do want to make sure that you've secured this well, and I think I will just weave it back a little bit on itself into here like you would do your tail, just so that it sits neatly. Whoops. And this one here we do also need to finish in, so let's just take it back across. Now this is splitting, which is a bit annoying, makes it a wee bit tricky to get it through the eye of the needle. So you've got your, here we go, the nylon-y or polyester part of it and the elastic coming away. Right, so we'll just take that through. And I think that'll probably be fine just as is. So let's trim that. As you can see, it's sitting fairly parallel to the last one that we did. Okay. So at the end of my second row, I just noticed that it was a little bit more pulled up and I had quite a long tail here. So just give it a good stretch across and get it sitting nice and even. You'll be able to tell that it's not sitting pulled up on any particular line more than another. So I'm at the point now where I can tie off this end and I can start my third row. Right, so I've just noticed, look at this. So that's not good. You're going to see that, very obvious. So I'm going to have to undo that little bit there where I've knotted it and just get that positioned so that it's sitting behind on this top edge, maybe coming down through here to this last bit. We definitely can't have that showing. Well, that was a really good exercise because it was quite a mission to undo. So my tie-offs are working really well, which is good to see, but in the meantime I've split the shirring elastic, so I'm just going to see if the good old technique of folding over the eye of the needle and then squeezing it through will enable me, there we go, excellent, to pull that through. Right, so we're just going to give that another shot. We want to be taking it on the top edge, so I think I'll go down this position. And here I need to avoid that hole. Just don't want the elastic being seen at all. And maybe into here. Let's have a look. Yep, that's better. Alright, so now we'll do the tie off, and then so I'm just going to go back on itself. So I'm doing around about three good solid tie-offs with this, and then yeah, that was quite a mission to undo. So that's good. That's what we want. We want to know that it's going to be strong enough to handle the wear and tear of use and laundering, etc. Okay, so now that I've got that done, 3 good solid times, pulled it nice and tight, I'm just going to take it back down into here. That unraveled thread is a pain, but I cannot afford to not work with it, so I'm going to go back up again. Reality is I might get to the end of this and decide I don't like it at all, and so therefore build proper straps for the dress. But at this stage I'm actually wanting to do a little bit like a halter tie, which is a little bit more lightweight, and we'll see. It may work, it may not work. And then I just need to weave this one in as well. Doesn't want to go in. There we go, got it. Back through there. I've left this a bit short, which is not making life easy. So now I am definitely going to have trouble getting that through, so I'll show you a little trick. Okay, I'm just going to use a standard piece of thread. This is tricky when you are not able to really have a long enough tail, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around, and we're going to attempt to pull it through just by going back on itself. So I've created, see what I've done here? I've just created, and I'm pulling that through. Haven't got much to work with at all, so now I'm trying to just drag that through and finish it off. It's just a good little tip. If you've got some regular thread, just use it as a pull through. Okay, so I'm starting my row 3. I've tied that off, and I'm just having a wee look here. I'm going to have to travel, it's going to just drop down each time slightly. Just going to come back in here. So where you position your shirring elastic is really going to be dependent on the stitch that you've chosen for your bodice, or whatever it is that you're working with that you've decided you would like to have a little bit of extra support. And yes, this is a little bit of a time consuming add-on, but if you do want your finished item to fit the child well and to last, then this is a great way to do it. And as I said, it can work on dresses for adults, blouses, cuffs, gloves, even hats. I'm just going to check that. Yep, I'm not seeing anything there. It's just important, isn't it, that you're not going to see it. So we're travelling along, we're going to come through this one, back across. Just staying on the upper part of the stitch. Okay, I'm at the end of row 3, and I'm sort of getting familiar with the amount of tail that I need, but I am just going to check that everything's sitting really nicely and I'm not over gathering up one part of it. Now I had originally thought that I would maybe only have done one row at the bottom and the top, but I think you can see as we're working the 4 rows that we're going to get a really nice even elastication across here. Row 4. Now I'm trying to weigh up whether or not I want to be right up close on this top edge, but if I come down to the next one, it's quite close to that other row. I think we've got enough coverage that we can do it. Okay, so let's give it a try. I think I'll just start this one back a little bit so that I've got more coverage in here to hide where my starting knot is. Every single time I've done the starting area, I have ended up with a few hassles to weave in the end, and I've had to use my little cotton thread to pull it through the eye of the needle, but you know what, that's fine. It definitely beats being frustrated and trying to do it manually. Okay, so I've just got to be careful here because I'm very aware that I'll go underneath that as a channel and see whether or not that's pretty good. Don't really see anything there. So I think we'll just repeat that along the way as we go. Just keep grabbing that little piece here at the back, slipping through, travelling across these stitches at the top of the first hole, and again having just another look in here. I'm really happy with that. I'm not seeing any of the elastic, so sorry, I just bumped the table. I'm not seeing any of the elastic there, so I'm happy that that's going to work and I can continue around. Yeah, it's looking really good. Okay, so I've almost finished row 4. As I'm doing this, I'm just thinking about the fact that this is fairly heavy, this bodice, and the weight of the dress, and how does that play out to sit on a child? Would it be better for me to maybe put proper straps on it? The other option too, in the way that I've constructed this, I've made it really so that you could do it in, whoopsie, we've got that splitting again. You could do it in a much lighter, maybe a 4-ply cotton for the bodice, because you're actually making it to fit the chest measurement by how many rows you do. It's not, you're not needing to change necessarily how many chains too much. There'll be basic measurements. I really want this pattern to be very easily customizable across a range of sizes. So we'll see. Now I just need to pull that up a bit just to get that sitting. It's probably a bit much. Just ease it out. Okay. And like with the last one too there, I think I'll just finish this tying off just back a wee way from this point so that it definitely is not visible. So we'll just do the tie off here. It's just going back and forth, feeding the needle through, pulling it nice and tight. The elastic sort of grips on itself. I think if you do at least 3, should be pretty safe. And then we're just going to weave back in here. Just going to catch underneath, weave it back again. Whoops, and I've just about lost it again. There we go. And back in and just down a little bit further. And that should do the trick. Trim it off, and then I just need to again secure this one. Right, and there we have it. So we now have this beautiful elasticity. Taking it back, it will have memory, and that feels really nice. And again, remember that we are aiming for around a half measure to about 9 or 10, so it has pulled it in quite a bit, but look at what happens. We're able to get that full stretch right across to a good 20, so that'll be a really nice fit on a 19 to 20 inch chest. think that works, and I think it will be, obviously the test will come when we actually pop it on a child. So what I'm thinking of doing is using these areas here to actually create a weave-in area that I can put a tie. So that's my next step, is to figure out how I'm going to do that. Okay, so I'm actually really liking this bodice, how it's sitting, and I'm thinking about the ties I want around the top of it. Now this is a 10 ply cotton, and it's 100%. It doesn't have a lot of memory or give, so this is why we did the shirring elastic into here. Oops, hang on. Oh boy, just got a dog who's decided to move across. Move across. Move across. Okay, and then I thought, I wonder whether I could make like a cord, or just, and I thought, no, I don't think I like the look of a chain. So what I've just done here is I've just braided the yarn to create this. I've left that like that now, tidy it up, but it almost looks like a wee tassel. So I'm trying to work out whether or not we position it. Actually, I think we just, this is trial and error, and this is where I think sometimes people get a little bit locked in to needing hard and fast definites, when really you just want to be going with the flow. So let's take this through. I'm going to start at the top hole. This is the beauty of this pattern. Now this may not work if you decided to do a different stitch for the bodice, but there's no reason why you couldn't use potentially a braided piece like this and have it come underneath this piece and then pull up and tie. What I'm wanting to do with this is also, it's going to give a little bit of tightness around the chest, just again to ensure that we have got the ability to hold this on. I know that we've elasticated it. This is why I love this stitch. This stitch is so cool because it kind of creates like eyelets. So I'm just safety pin in and out all the way around, and hopefully we might have an even number, because that's another thing, is depending on the starting and ending position. Whoops. This could work where you could actually, I've just got lots of ideas. You could interlink down through here and do straps up this way using ties. Okay, so this is interesting. I need it to be coming out at this end, so we're going to go over and under. So I think we're going to be pretty close, but I think I need it up a bit higher. So I'm going to go in and come out. Yay. Let's take safety pin off and have a wee look here. So I've made it plenty long enough, because obviously we need it to go around a 20-inch chest. Just going to pull more of that through, get that sort of relatively even. Okay, yeah, this can work. And then do we want it to come under this to secure? I might see if I can feed this through. I'm just thinking that it might help, oops, if it slightly interlocks at this position and then for pulls Hang on, let's do it and you'll see what I'm thinking. Yeah, okay. So once it's on, oh, that's perfect. And then as it pulls up, it's pulling up from this position, but it's also, the more it pulls up, the more it's actually going to be tightening around the chest. So we need to just make sure we've allowed plenty of give there. Now to go up to the shoulder, the measurement is around 4 inches, and then around the neck into a tie. So I think we'll be okay with the length of that. So I have made it plenty long enough, and I've sort of left like little tassels the way I've left that. It's nice, the cotton actually comes away. So I'm just going to trim off, make it tidy. And this, the test on this is going to be on a child. I think obviously if it was a wearable for me, I could try it on and I could look at it. Now the whole concept of this little dress is that when the child has grown out of the length, could it not come down and be round the waist? And so this could just be tied off as a tie at the front. There's just multiple ways this could be used, and I think that's one thing that I really like to try and do, is particularly in clothing, if we can make it be a little bit multifunctional, then that's really good, really good. Okay, so that works on the, well, appears to work. Whether or not it works in theory on a child remains to be seen. Great, so thanks for watching that. That's as far as I've got so far with the concept of the design, and my next job is to find a 2-year-old or someone with a 19 or 20 inch chest that would be about the right proportions to actually try this little dress on, and for us to see, have the parts that I've thought about actually worked. And if it has, then I'll be onto the drawing board and getting this pattern written up and making sure that it's out to you as fast as I can, so that by summer you can have some little dresses made up for those gorgeous little children in your life. So thanks again for joining me. I'm Paula Hope, the Caravan Hooker, signing out. Happy crocheting!